Hi, listeners. Stories have so much power, and so does whoever controls the narrative. It is time that we dissect and analyze these stories. I am Vipul, and this is WokeTales. Hi, everyone. In the US, the Revenue Act of 1935, signed into law on August 30, 1935, raised federal income tax on higher income levels by introducing the wealth tax. The 1935 Act also was popularly known at the time as the Soak the Rich tax. But you know what came before Soak the Rich? Eat the Rich. In 1793 France, French revolutionaries violently turned against the country's monarch. Bread was sparse and tensions between wealthy aristocrats and commoners were high. An estimated 27,000 people were killed. The widespread starvation and executions popularized a saying attributed to philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, quote, "When the people shall have nothing more to eat, they will eat the rich." End quote. And on that note, it's story time. For this episode, I bring you a story where the weak and helpless defeat the strong and powerful. This does not happen in real life, but it does happen in folk tales, as in this East African story of the Maskini and the Tajiri. In Kiswahili language, Maskini means poor man and Tajiri means rich man. Every evening, the Tajiri sat down to a hearty meal prepared for him in his own kitchen. The food that was left over would have been enough to feed a whole family, but the Tajiri was extremely stingy. The leftovers from his table went to fatten his pigs so that he would have the benefit of them later. The Maskini lived on simple fare. He owned a goat that gave him milk and cheese, but his evening meal was usually nothing more than a bowl of porridge. However, he had found a way to make it more enjoyable. He would eat his meal while hidden outside the Tajiri's kitchen, where wonderful smells came wafting through the open window. They made Maskini's mouth water, and the porridge seemed like a feast. One evening, the Tajiri decided to take a walk in his garden in order to work up an appetite for dinner. He saw the Maskini sitting outside the kitchen window. As the Tajiri watched, he saw the Maskini inhale deeply, and a blissful look came over his face. "How dare he help himself to my smells?" thought the Tajiri, and he ordered his servants to seize the Maskini and escort him to the village jail. A few days later, the Maskini was summoned before the courts that met weekly in the village center, where the case would be decided on its merits. The Tajiri explained that the smells from the kitchen belonged to him, and the Maskini was depriving him of them. As payment, he demanded the Maskini's goat, which was the only thing he owned. When asked to respond, the Maskini, looking very forlorn, could only stare at the ground and shuffle his feet, afraid to speak. The village elders, who had been hearing the case, now withdrew to the shade of a nearby tree. After a brief discussion, the village chief came forward and addressed the crowd. "The Maskini did help himself to the smells from the Tajiri's kitchen," she said. "However, he did not receive any food from him. We have concluded, therefore, that the Tajiri should not be given the goat. However, in fairness to him, we believe he should have the right to smell the Maskini's goat whenever he wants." The Tajiri was furious and left without saying a word. But the people of the village approved of the court's decision. They felt that justice had been done. The end. But when will justice be done in our society? Seems like we need a woman chief like in the story. Just saying. There have been demands of a wealth tax in recent years for rich people to pay their fair share. That sentiment, billionaires are smart and know how to work the system, and rest of us are chumps, has sparked a new grassroots movement for the rich to pay more. Eat the Rich comments on money hoarders, like the Tajiri who gluttonously bathe in billions, a fraction of which could easily end world hunger. It is now a rallying cry against an overly capitalistic economy that encourages the rich to become richer while the poor starve. We now know that this kind of winners take all philosophy allows the very fortunate, through rigging political power to assist their economic power, to basically monopolize the future itself. For Rousseau, the notion of eating the rich was an exaggeration of the struggles of the starving masses, in response to a quite literal famine that was French Revolution's most proximal cause. Over 200 years later, these words remain relevant and have inspired the global conversation on the ills of the rich getting richer at the expense of the poor. On that note, bye for now. Let me know your thoughts on the story and our discussion by emailing me on WokeTalesPodcast@gmail.com or through social media at WokeTalesPodcast on Instagram and WokeTalesPod on Twitter. And please rate, review, and like WokeTales Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe so you can easily access our weekly stories. If you have any story recommendations, or if you want to come dissect and analyze a story with me, give me a shout out on email or social media, because whatever you do, keep dissecting and keep analyzing.